It's ding ding, two men in a ring. We put pride in your stride and a quiver in your liver. You want 'em, we've got 'em, coming to you. Loud and proud, he's the biggest, he's the baddest. It's Mr. Gavin Davis on the Gavin Davis Podcast Show.
And good evening, everyone. Thanks for listening in. Okay, so tonight's guest, he is a retired professional MMA fighter, former Welsh professional lightweight champion, and the owner of Impact MMA North Wales. My friend, Ian Willy Williams. Willie, thanks for coming on the podcast, mate.
Yeah, guys.
Yeah.
All good.
How are you doing, mate? All right?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a catch up, mate, to be fair. So just for the viewers back home, Willie trained with me up in North Wales for a long period of time, and we did quite well with the MMA. Got you going and everything, didn't we?
Some good times there, to be fair.
Yeah. Talk about the first time that I met you when Keith Della brought you under the stage, Plasmadoc. I was thinking about it this morning.
Yeah, the old jiu-jitsu days.
Yeah, so Keith Della, I remember he broke his wrists. Do you remember when he broke his wrists?
Yeah, on the scaffolding, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he come under the stage, wanted to do some trick.
Had his wrist broke, did he? Oh.
Yeah, I think he fell off the scaffolding and he went down like hands first, and he broke his wrists, right? It did terrible scars. Yeah.
Kept him out a while, I remember that.
Yeah. And he came under the stage. He wanted to do some training because he got into his weights a little bit.
Yeah, he went big.
Yeah. And Andy, because I was training with Andy at the time under the stage. And then he brought Richie down. And then all of a sudden he brought you down. And then it started like organically growing.
Yeah.
What's your memories of that, mate?
Yeah, it was good times. It was good times. It got me going, didn't it? You know, it's like I was always one for having trouble on the weekends, and it really settled me down, to be fair. It's sort of sets you the boys from the men, doesn't it? The old jiu-jitsu, especially when you came about 9 stone soaking wet and started tying us all up.
Yeah, I was already cross training a little bit then, and I was I was quite far ahead of you guys because you done a bit of boxing growing up, hadn't you?
Yeah, I done a bit of striking and stuff.
Yeah, and then let's talk actually before we go into that. Something you just said there about calming you down a little bit, right? The first time I met you, I'd heard about you when I used to go out for a pint.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I heard about you and Brookie and people like that, the Pennakai lads.
Yeah.
The first time I met you, I said to you, how many fights have you had? Right? Thinking you'd done a bit. And you said to me about 1,000, right? And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, I fight every weekend. Right?
It was most weekends, wasn't it?
So like, when you think about it.
But, you know, that was the way it was growing up where we were. It was like the Wild West in some of the pubs.
Every weekend, mate.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Have you got any good stories about that?
Well,
Brookie.
Yeah, I lost my teeth in one fight. Lost my teeth, and one of my ex-girlfriends picked me up one night, and I had one arm left on my jumper, hair everywhere, a couple of teeth down. She's like, "Have you had a good night?" I'm like, "Yeah, standard night."
What about the time that something was kicking off in liquid and you took your false teeth out and give them to Brookie, or did you give them to Nevins or someone?
I was having a bit of bother, and I said, I just had them done again. I was like, just look after them for a second. It's going to go off in a minute. So I was having a bit of a 1-to-1, and then I turned around and Brookie was right next to me swinging, and we got chucked out. I said, "Where's my teeth?" And he said, "I've lost them."
Spent a fortune on your teeth.
Yeah, absolute nightmare.
And I always remember the one you said that when you went down to Oswestry, when you met Becky, and you went down to, and she invited you down to Oswestry.
Said, "Bring your mates." I was like, "Nah, I can't do that. Can't do that." And she's like, "Fine." Took him down on a bank holiday. Within the first half an hour, it all kicked off.
Yeah. Incredible. Mate, with me being in the military, I speak to a lot of lads in my trade, and it's surprising. Do you know where I think a lot of it is? I think a lot of it's where you grow up, you know.
Yeah,
because
we were council state boys, and we were sort of dragged up. We didn't have anything. you had to plan your route to go to the shop without getting smacked. You know what I mean? It was just the way we were brought up, and it came second nature. As soon as someone kicked off, it might not have been your fight. You just join in. And that's the way. It was just mad times when you look back.
Yeah, because I had a few scraps, like nowhere near as many as you and Brookie, but I had a few, and like I work with lads who have never had a fight, never had an argument, and I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, like my kids now, they have everything they want, and I wouldn't want them to ever have a fight. I wouldn't want them to see what we used to see, but
Yeah,
it's times now, isn't it?
times have changed, mate. Yeah, it is for the better with a lot of it as well.
Better, but not all the time, because I worry about my kids crossing the road now. They haven't got a clue.
Yeah,
You know, they have everything done there now. They don't socialize as much as we used to, and it's just different times.
Yeah. So you had all that background, and then you came down the stage. What were your first thoughts, mate?
Well, it was a long time ago. Remember when UFC started coming on Bravo?
Yeah.
And all them guys, and I thought, what's all this about? And I was just like, I was glued to it straight away, and I sort of wanted to get into that grappling side, because you know, a bit of wrestling, just wanted to do bits. And as soon as I had a bit of jiu-jitsu going under the stage, I thought, I'll come and have a go. And then I just got hooked pretty quick. You know, we did a bit of Thai boxing in Russ's, didn't we? And then remember Mike was starting to do a bit of BJJ, and Ashley Wilson was doing a bit of wrestling. So I just started mixing it up a little bit. And I thought, you know what, I'll give this a go. And obviously came to watch you at your first couple of fights in Liquid. And I just fancied it. And then as soon as I had that first fight, that was it. You know, it was, you know, I was probably jumped into the fight way too quick, because I remember in the fight camp, you know, didn't do a lot of ground game really. I was focusing on my striking you know, a lot, because that was where my strong point was. I remember the fight night, and everyone was saying, "Don't let this lad get you down, because he's really good on the ground." And lucky enough, my striking came into play that night, and I stopped him within about 8 seconds, didn't I, with a big right hand.
Yeah.
But, you know, from there, I just knew I had to start working on my wrestling and the groundwork and all that stuff, because it was nowhere near where it needed to be. But that was my mindset. I just fight. If someone offered me a fight, I'd just take the fight.
Yeah, I think a lot of people back then, I reminisce quite a bit about this, and I think about it.
Back then as well, wasn't it? It was like the little gloves as well.
Yeah.
You know, basically all in, wasn't it? It was only heel hooks that wasn't allowed, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think about it quite a lot, and I think a lot of people. I look at the way I train now, and I look at the way Chris Clear teaches, or Kev Capel teaches, or Konstantinos teaches, and we didn't have that 20 years ago. So you're talking around 2006. You're coming up to your 20 year anniversary soon, surely, for training.
It's 20 years on the mats, I should imagine now, mate.
Yeah, and if you look how you train at Impact now, we didn't really train like that back then. We were just trying to clutch at straws, weren't we?
It's evolved massively, you know. Just like having different guys. Obviously, I went down to Wigan for a long time to train under Tom Blackledge. He changed my game up, and I tried to just bring some of his way of teaching it up to Wrexham, and it's definitely helped. You know, we produced some good lads, and like look a year now. He wanted to go full time, and you know, and I said, look, I can't give you what you need. So obviously, I told Tom, I said, I've got a good lad here. I started taking him down with me, and look what he's gone. He's gone up to Cage Warriors, and he's absolutely smashing it.
Yeah.
Be under anyone better than Tom, because he's next level, and the guys were next level down there. It really pushed you, and it took you to the levels you needed to be, especially because I turned professional, and I was taking big fights and fighting full-time pros.
Yeah.
And without that coaching, I would have been nowhere near ready. Nowhere near ready.
Yeah, I agree. I've watched Ian's last few fights, and I had the Yorkshire Gripper on the other week, and I was talking to him about him, and that lad is sharp.
Mate, he's unbelievable. I took the lads a couple of weeks back, and they went 2 weeks in a run just down to Tom's, and they all said he's just like next level now. He's ridiculous. He's strong. He's fast. You know, his game's gone to the next level, and I do believe he could be the first from Wrexham in the UFC.
I agree.
I really think he's getting close.
I agree, mate.
Yeah,
I agree.
Brilliant kid now. And I've looked at some of his fights. He's a black belt, this Brazilian lad, so he's going to be good on the ground. But yeah, he's sick on the ground now. He's covered everywhere. But I think this is going to be a bit of a test for him. But if he gets past this, you know, he's looking at titles, and then the next step there.
Yeah, I
So,
think I look at his
Bobby-
I look at his body type as well, mate. His range and his he doesn't get tired. He doesn't fatigue.
Hey,
He's not
gas
even
tank-
peaked yet. He's not even
his
peaked.
gas tank is next level. He trust me, he puts the work in. Obviously, I don't speak to him every day now, but I'm
Yeah.
still looking, still seeing what he's doing. You know, social media, I'm always looking what he's doing, and you know, he's next level. He's really he's ready to go, and I mean big time.
Yeah, I see his posts and Caroline's posts. I'm made up for him, mate. It's nice to see lads who I remember him coming in that unit, and we used to call him strawweight.
Yeah, I remember. I remember sparring first time. He was probably about 14, and he was coming at me and he was throwing punches from everyone. I was like, "Who's this kid?"
Yeah.
You know, he was just from day one, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was game, mate. He was game. But it's so good to see
Yeah.
where he is now.
Yeah, I'm proud of him. You know, when you're coaching people and you don't want to lose them, but you can't hold people back. You know, the first time I started losing people, I used to take. I thought it was a bit. What was the word I'm looking for? I didn't want to lose him, so I thought I'm gutted to lose him. I thought it was a bit personal, but when I look back now, it's like everything was done for the right reasons. He's left because I couldn't give him what he needed to have. You know what I mean? Tom is 10 times the coach I'll ever be. He's been in it for years, and you know, just rolling with Tom, you know, he's just unbelievable, mate.
Yeah, I need to touch base with Tom, see if I can get him on the podcast. To be honest with you,
Yeah,
have a chat with him.
Yeah, he's a top man.
Yeah.
And it's not second to none.
Yeah. I was just gonna say you've still got a group of lads though. I think the only problem that you have, if I'm wrong, is you're not a full-time gym, really, are you?
No, we're not. You know, the standard is through the roof at the minute. You know, we've got 6 or 7 lads that will do well. The problem is with our gym is a lot of them work shifts now, so it's getting them all in the same nights. I work shifts as well, so I can't always be there. You know, it's difficult. That's why when Ye came, he said, "I want to leave the padders. I want to go full time." And I knew straight away then I couldn't give him what he wanted. That's why I spoke to Tom and said, you know, can you take him under your wing? And they haven't looked back.
Yeah, you've got a few lads there, young lads now who are like purple belts, and obviously you're under Gareth Duffy, aren't you, with Sukata MMA?
Duffy, yeah, and he started for about 2 or 3 years. He was a black belt as well, and then he's moved back to Poland. And then Duffy's come and took over. He's doing a great job as well.
Yeah,
I think there must be four or 5 purple belts in the gym now, and they're all a good standard, really good standard.
Yeah, and they're all young as well, mate, and they've all got that fire in their belly.
I'll be honest with you now, when you start rolling with them, you think, Jesus, I don't know if it's my age or they're just getting better and better.
Mate, it's a bit of both, I'll tell you now, because I was at Chris's on, what night was it? Well, Monday and Wednesday. I do double sessions when I go down there. I do no-gi first, then I stay on for the gi.
Yeah.
And we did the no-gi, and we were rolling for 40 minutes of the no-gi, right? I've got a judo third dan in there who's 82 kilo. He's like a bull, right?
Yeah.
He's a blue belt in BJJ, but you know what I mean? He's more switched on than a lot of blue belts. And I've got 4 or 5 young lads in there that their cardio's just off the scale, mate. And then we went into the gi, and we just did an hour rolling in the gi. And it was 5 minutes sweep or submit, 5 minutes passing the guard, swapping over.
Yeah.
And literally, I come out of there at 9 o'clock after doing the double, and I was like that trying to open the car.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Hard work, mate, innit?
And I've always had good cardio, mate, but I'm just getting older. It's hard.
I played football Sunday for the vets, and my legs are still hurting now. And we played Sunday, and it's Friday now. The body just doesn't recover like it used to, and unfortunately, that's the sad thing about getting old, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
You just don't like we used to. Don't get me wrong, I still hold my own with anybody rolling, but it's just getting harder and harder. You know, you're like, I need a breather, yeah.
Yeah. I think
Like,
I think it's the
like,
recovery as well.
yeah, that's massive. It's massive. We've got the likes of Gavin. He's unbelievable now coming through. He's probably the best I've coached at everything. His striking, his ground game, his wrestling, but he's just so unfortunate with injuries. He's
Isn't
had he's had every time we get him nearly there, he's just so unlucky. Like,
he? See,
but
I remember Garen doing a little bit with me going back
yeah,
years ago when he was a kid, you know, and obviously I grew up with his mum. His mum's only a couple of years older than me. She went through school with me. And yeah, I'm really happy Garen's got to the level where he is. Do you know what I mean? And he'll keep improving.
he could, if he gets a bit of luck and he gets the right fights, he could push on to good things as well. I do believe he's a really good standard of, but he's just got to believe in himself a bit more and then get these injuries out of the way.
Yeah.
And then hopefully next year we're going to get him going some good amateur fights and then push him on because he's got the ability. I watch him spar now and he's really good.
Yeah.
I'd say he's probably the best in the gym now. To putting it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so going back, you got your first fight out the way. That first fight, I remember you caught him with an overround. It was a lad from Chester, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, what was that gym in Chester? The RGC is it or something like that? It's a Jits place, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't RGA. It wasn't RGA under Steve. It was a different. It was like a little hut thing, wasn't it? Rough and ready. And you caught
they
him.
were grappling based, weren't they?
Yeah. Where did you? Who did you fight after that?
A kid from Blackpool.
Was he the one
initially-
who had his hands all messed up at the weigh-in?
No,
Who was the one at the weigh-in that turned up and he looked like he'd be like Tong Po would be punching the walls and that? His hands were all, I remember you saying to me his hands are all messed up like.
I can't remember who that one was, to be fair. It's that long ago, and it's probably 18 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
The lad from Blackpool, he was more of a boxer. As soon as I took him down, I finished him with a key lock, and his ground game wasn't up to scratch, to be honest. I think I double-legged him pretty quick and took him down, got side control, and the fight was basically over again.
Yeah. But see, with that, how long had you been training then? 2 years?
I would say 12 to 15 months. Yeah, it wasn't 2 years.
So within 12 to 15 months, you've already gone from a brawler who's got good striking to someone who's beating people with key locks and got a bit of a ground game.
I'd say the grappling side came to me pretty quick. I had like raw strength. Everyone used to grapple me and say, "Well, you're strong for your size." Everyone still says the same now. And I loved that grappling side. And I used to do loads of it, wall drills against the wall, wrestling against the wall. I used to love all that. Randy Couture, I used to just love watching him, and I used to just take bits off it. You know what I mean? Start training. That's the way I used to love fighting. And I picked it up pretty quick. I think the grappling side.
You did, mate. You did, because I remember rolling with you the first couple of times, and yeah, I trick you into an armbar or I trick you into something. But I remember thinking to myself, once he switches on to what's going on here, this is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. I'm within, I'd say, 18 months. I was never going to be a guy on the ground. I was always more wrestling, get him down, side control, mounts.
Yeah.
I love fighting ground and pound or arm bars, basic guillotines and stuff like that. I love a guillotine, but I was never going to be one of these fancy guys on the ground. Do you know what I mean? I used to just stick basics all the time, basics. And I used to just go over them all the time, and they still work for me today.
Yeah. I had a phase where I started looking at a lot of fancy techniques, and to be fair, the last 5 years, especially since I got my black belt, I just go back to basics, mate. And everything I'm working on is basics and getting my taps with.
You go back to when you're learning from the white belt. It's like them kind of moves and submissions you're learning always are the ones that you go back to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how many fights did you have before you fought Paul Redman? Was it about 6 or 7?
Yeah, I think I was 5 semi-pro, wasn't it? And I was 5-0 semi-pro, and then my first professional fight was Paul Redman.
That was
So
your first one, was it?
it couldn't have been any harder. But
Um,
I learned a lot from that fight. You know, I never want to go into fights with excuses, but obviously I was breaking up with my first wife at the time. I remember a week before the fight, I was drinking wine. You know, I was
yeah.
training my ass off, but when I wasn't training, I was drinking as well. You know, and when you're going into fights like that, you just can't do it. I mean, I remember the first round, it was going well. I was probably beating him in the stand up.
Mate, I'll tell you what messed you up in that fight was when he put that Peruvian necktie on you.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know how you got out of it, but once you got
Oh,
out of it, it nearly killed you.
yeah, it was very hot in there. Do you remember? And
Oh
the
yeah.
place, and we got pretty greasy quick. Both of us did, to be fair. But as soon as he put that on, it was deep. It was really deep, and that was the way I was. I'd have rather gone to sleep than that was just the fights I was, rather than tap. It's stupid when you look back, but that's just the way I was.
Yeah.
I get out, but it took a lot out of me. I remember getting up. I think the buzzer went within 20 seconds of me getting out, and I went to the cage, and I felt like someone was pulling on my legs. I was like, heavy
Yeah.
feet, you know. And then I just didn't recover, and I knew straight away he didn't want to stand on me because he didn't like the leg kicks. I was smashing him with the leg kicks, and then he double legged me, big slam, and once he got me down, then I just didn't have the gas tank. You know, if I'd have had the right camp, Paul's career at the time, because he was only 4 or 5. I think he had 4 pro fights, so he was ahead of me, well ahead of me, in the experience side. But I think it'd have been a different fight at the time. You know, he went on to have a massive career, didn't he? And
Yeah.
was well done. You know, because he was a top lad out the cage as well.
Yeah, he was, mate. I remember his weight cut, right? And
Yeah, I remember it was
because,
nothing.
mate, I said to Steve Orton, I said, I don't think he's going to be fighting tomorrow. It's the worst weight cut I've ever seen.
Yeah, to be fair, I've been there myself in the end. When I fought Tim Wilde, I had the worst weight cut ever, and people were holding me up. There was nothing left of me. You know, so I understand how it is. But to be fair to Paul, the next day he looked like a new man.
Yeah.
You know,
I couldn't believe it, mate, because
he
I,
put all that on, didn't he?
mate, literally, I remember, I think he flew in on a Wednesday and he was already cutting weight, right?
Yeah, I remember.
What
Because he was big, 70
yeah,
kg.
he was probably about 80 kilo, cutting a
Yeah,
70, right? And I always said to you, didn't I? You need to be at 66 at pro,
yeah,
right? And we had him on the scales in that sauna in Plasmaddock, and Neil Serry was holding him up, right? And they took the sauna suit off him. He was totally naked, right? And like he was like, I'll go back in, I'll go back in. So I was like, go on, then crack on. And he went 3 or 4 times, and
nothing
then
coming out.
mate, he was gone, like he was gone. And then he was like, oh, don't worry about, I'll give 50% of my purse away. I'm not bothered about it. I just want to make the weight. And I'm like, listen, I'm not bothered about that. I just want you to be fighting tomorrow because Willie is ready to fight.
What did we do? He came in a few pounds over, didn't he? I let him off, didn't I?
I think it was like £1.50, mate.
He didn't. He wasn't far off it. To be fair to him, he tried his best.
Mate,
I wasn't going to fight.
It was that bad. Even his penis went in. It was like it went inverted, mate.
Yeah, mate. When I fought, like I said, I fought Tim Wilde, and we were in DW in the steam room, and I was in and out for 4.5 hours. No joke. In the end, they were holding me up 4.5 hours, and I was standing on the weir, and it was nothing there. My cock was on the inside. People walking in and out, and I didn't give a fuck because all I wanted to do was make weight. And when I look back, it's fucking ridiculous. I knew that was the only time I ever knew I hadn't recovered the next day. It was not. I was doing the warm up with Tom. There was nothing left. There was nothing left in the tank.
Do you think that's the hardest thing about fighting is making the weight? Because I do.
As I got older, obviously I was fighting in my late 30s, and it got harder and harder. The weight just didn't want to come off me. And when I was fighting at 66, I think I only lost 1 fight, and that was to Tim Wilde.
Yeah.
How he got to that weight, I'll never know, because he was a monster. He was a monster. You know, how he ever made that weight. I know he struggled that night as well, because on the morning of the weigh-ins, he wasn't at the weigh-in because he hadn't made weight. He made it later on in the day, but you know, again, he came back in. This was the difference, you know, the professional people around you. He looked like a new man the next day, where I felt like shit. You know, I went home myself. I didn't have the right nutrition guys. You know, it's just experience, in it. Like
Yeah.
now, my guys, I can take a lot where I went wrong and show them the right ways. But I didn't have that many people around me at the time.
Yeah. I always thought 66 was your category, mate.
It was, mate, because every great good win I had come from 66 as a pro.
Yeah.
You know, lightweight. I had some good wins, but that's where I struggled because they were always a little bit bigger than me in there. Like Ashley Reese, he made 70 key. On the night of the fight, he was up in his 80s. You know, I would hear that he probably had 8-9 kilo on me on the fight on the night.
And he probably had 15 years on you as well, because he was in his early 20s, yeah?
Yeah, massively, yeah. He was on, ready to go at the time. He was probably the best amateur in the country at the time when he came into the pro ranks.
Yeah.
Exciting. He was, every fight he had was exciting, and he fought all the top guys at an amateur level.
Yeah. See, I look back on a lot of your fights. I think realistically, from the age you started, with where you were when you started to what you achieved, I think you did really, really well, mate.
Yeah, you know, when I look back, I some of the fights I shouldn't have took, you know, but I don't know if it was ego or it's just the way I was. You know, I didn't turn fights down. When I look back, I'd never let my fighters take some of the fights I took. You know, I remember getting an offer to go down Sheffield. The money wasn't fantastic, but it was a lot more than I'd ever had. International title. I thought, oh, that sounds good. Alice Hampton from Next Gen.
Paddy Pimblett's coach, isn't he? He does all the pad work for Paddy and that, doesn't he?
He's the one of the main coaches at Next Gen, isn't he? He's a black belt as well.
Yeah.
Paddy was actually in the corner that night. You know, and I just took the fight. You know, didn't even look into his research and didn't look who he was. That was the way I was. You know, it's just stupid when you look back, really.
Yeah, his ground game is top draw, mate. Top draw.
We had a bit of striking in the beginning. He took me down, and he must have been on my back for 2.5 minutes. You know, he was strong. He was very strong, and I think he tapped me out with a gillis. Yeah, but he had some kind of choke from the back. He had me. I'm sure he had me back. I can't remember rightly because it's a long time since I watched the fight. But
yeah,
he was very strong. He was good on the ground. Next Gen lads are, though, their ground game's really good. It's underrated.
Yeah. What weight was that at, mate? Was that at 66 or 70?
No, I was 70 as well.
Yeah, so really, you shouldn't have been taking that fight neither, a pro.
No, definitely not. And I wasn't walking around at 70 at the time. I was under.
Yeah.
You know, didn't really have to do a weight cut for the 70 kilos.
No. And that's mad that you struggled to get to 66 in it, get that 4 kilo. Because I know my last 3 fights, I was going from 61 to 57, which is 4 kilo, and I was doing that comfortable.
The problem was what I had, my clock was all over the place because I was doing weight cuts and doing night shifts.
Right.
I wasn't sleeping. I was up all night, and the body just doesn't react like it should be reacting, should it?
No, and then you're eating at shit times.
I was trying not to eat, but either you have to have some kind of fluids in you for the 12-hour shift. I was doing nights, doing the weight cuts, doing the weigh-ins, and then on the weekends I was taking these big fights. It's very rare weeks off before fighting.
Yeah,
that was full-time work.
Right, mate. We're gonna break. We're gonna come back for a part 2.
Yeah.
Right. So we're gonna bring you back in a sec. Just want to say before we break, I want to say well done to Sebastian Broche, Yoga BJJ, one of our sponsors on the podcast. He's just reached 100,000 subscriptions with his Yoga BJJ. So if you're into yoga, if you're into BJJ, have a look at what Sebastian Broche is doing. Also, Willie, where can people find you if they're in North Wales and they want to do a bit of training with you, mate?
So Impact MMA Wrexham. They can add me on Instagram, Impact MMA Wrexham, or Ian Willy 79. Just give us a message and I'll always get back to you. And then anyone welcome to come up.
Cool. Okay, we'll be back for a part 2, everyone.
All right, cheers, mate.